36 players in NBA history have won a regular season MVP. This is the final part of ranking those 36 players based on how their career played out. We already ranked numbers 11 through 36, so click the link in the description to catch up to speed. And without further ado, let's rank the 10 greatest MVPs ever. At number 10, I have Steph Curry. Curry slides into this spot because of how he revolutionized the NBA. Before Curry, the three-point line was underutilized. Teams didn't comprehend how valuable the three-point shot was because there was no player like Curry in the league who could create his own shot and knock down 5 threes a night with great efficiency. But when Curry proved he could be the number one option on a championship team, as he was with 4 in the last 8 seasons, teams started to shift their view and draft or sign three-point specialists. Now you can't look at a team without seeing one player attempt at least 6 threes a night. As for Curry's MVP seasons, the thing to talk about is his 2016 campaign, where he led the Warriors to a historic 73-9 regular season record while averaging a 35-5. This led to Curry being named the first and only unanimous MVP in NBA history. The fact that Curry, an average defender at best, is even in the conversation to be a top 10 player of all time is a testament to his leadership and overall offensive talent. But what's even more impressive to me is that Curry created a play style that, for better or for worse, will stick around the NBA for the next 20 plus seasons. At number 9, I have Wilt Chamberlain. Chamberlain is truly the toughest player to rank on this list, because you could argue his statistical dominance was mostly in part to the competition he played. But let's take away that argument for a second. Let's look at Wilt from an era-neutral eye. Wilt was a 7'1", 275-pound behemoth who was truly dominant as a scorer, passer, rebounder, and shot blocker. For the first 6 seasons of Chamberlain's career, when he was going up against guys like Russell and Pettit 8 to 12 times a season, he led the league in scoring 6 times and rebounding 4 times. And when Chamberlain was 35 going against Kareem and Willis Reed in the early 70s, he was still putting up an 18 and 18 on great efficiency. There's nothing you could take away from the statistical greatness of Wilt. You might be asking why Wilt is ranked so low. The reason for Wilt being ranked 9th is because his greatest bragging point is also his biggest downfall. Again, you can't deny the statistical greatness, but what I can deny is his ability to be a leader and work in a team. No matter how many points Chamberlain scored, he always fell short to Russell and the Celtics, except in 1967. He chased the individual records and statistical greatness, and it wasn't until he was 30 that he learned true greatness like the players above him. But at that point, it was too little too late for Chamberlain, and he will forever be remembered as a truly dominant player, but someone who never understood the leadership and teamwork abilities that makes a player great. At number 8, I have Kobe Bryant. Very few times in NBA history has someone matched the tenacity and leadership abilities to Michael Jordan. Dwayne Wade did it for the 2006 NBA Finals. Jimmy Butler somewhat did that in the 2020 NBA Finals, but Kobe Bryant did it for his entire career. He started as a sidekick to Shaquille O'Neal, winning 3 straight titles as the second fiddle. But if you know Kobe or Jordan's mentality, you knew that it would bother Kobe that he wasn't the number 1 guy. So after Kobe and Shaq's feud, Shaq requested a trade, and Kobe was the top guy in LA. And while Kobe's numbers looked great, the team overall struggled. But a Pau Gasol trade later, and the Lakers were back in the title hunt. And after disappointment from losing to the Celtics in the 2008 finals, Kobe went back-to-back in 2009 and 2010, bringing home 5 titles overall before retiring in 2016. We all know about the greatness of Kobe Bryant, but what does this greatness mean? Yes, Kobe was the second option on 3 title teams and the top option on 2 title teams. But in the 2009 and 2010 title teams, he choked in Game 7s and almost single-handedly cost the Lakers 2 titles. Yes, Kobe was a great scorer and a regular season player, but he only won 1 MVP in his career, which he probably didn't even deserve to win. For every positive one could say about Kobe, there's probably a negative. But what makes Kobe an all-time great isn't the stats or the championships. It's the Mamba mentality that's inspired players like Jason Tatum and Devin Booker. The Mamba mentality that pushed his teammates further, that demanded excellency. No matter what you think of Kobe, you have to recognize and appreciate that his mentality carried the Lakers to relevancy after years of mediocrity. At number 7, I have Larry Bird. Bird's legacy has become a casualty in many modern-day rankings simply because his numbers don't tell the full story. because from 1980 to 1988, Bird was unstoppable in every aspect of the game of basketball. And for the majority of those years, you could argue he was the best player in the NBA. From his rookie year to his 9th season in the league, Bird accumulated 9 All-Star appearances, 9 All-NBA first-team appearances, 3 All-Defensive selections, 3 MVPs in back-to-back-to-back years, 3 NBA titles, and 2 Finals MVPs. Bird, along with Chamberlain, has the greatest start to an NBA career ever. So why is he not higher? Well, after that 1988 season, Bird started dealing with back and foot problems, which forced him out of all but 6 games. And after that, while the stats look nearly as identical as before Bird's injuries, he was nowhere near the same defender or athlete. So unfortunately for Larry, we do have to dock him some points there, as the guys above him all had 12 plus years of excellence, while Bird only had 8. But let's put a little more respect on Larry's name. Bird is only one of 3 players in NBA history to have won 3 straight MVPs, with the other 2 being Russell and Chamberlain. That means no player since 1986, or Bird's last MVP season, has won 3 straight MVPs. We just saw how Jokic was treated this past season while he was vying for his 3rd straight MVP. That's exactly what Bird went through, and he still proved to the voters that he deserved that award 3 times in a row. If that's not worthy of at least the 7th spot on this list, then I don't know what is. At number 6, I have Magic Johnson. I went back and forth with who deserved this spot, and I ultimately gave the edge to Magic, because while his prime wasn't as transcendent as Larry's, it was just as impactful and lasted 4 years longer. And just like Bird, Magic is slowly becoming a casualty of the NBA's social media era. Many are quick to discredit his accomplishments, saying he was carried by Kareem to those championships. So then how can you explain Magic winning 3 regular season MVPs and 3 finals MVPs? Many say his stats look unimpressive compared to the rest of the 10 greatest players ever, but no player was the level of playmaker and floor general like Magic was. Sure, you can compare Magic's base numbers to someone like Steph Curry's, but you can't compare his impact, where he took a team that won 47 games and lost in the Western Conference semifinals, and in his rookie year brought them to 60 wins and an NBA title. And in 1991, his last true season in the NBA, he took the Lakers to the NBA Finals. The next year without Magic, the Lakers only won 43 games and lost in the first round of the playoffs. You can't put into words how impactful Magic was for basketball as a whole. He was the first floor general that could play any position on the court. His point guard-esque skills in a forward's body allowed for versatility not yet explored in the NBA. As a result, we have players like LeBron James, who are able to control the game in every way imaginable. So although Magic's prime was cut short, his overall impact on basketball has changed the game we know today. At number 5, I have Tim Duncan. The big fundamental often gets underrated because of his lack of presence on social media and his widely considered boring playstyle. But you can't penalize a guy for his playstyle, especially if it's as effective as Duncan's. And while his peak never reached the heights of some of the players above and below him, his level of consistency is almost unmatched. From the moment he entered the NBA in 1997, he averaged 21 points, 12 rebounds, and 2 blocks a game. In 2013, Duncan's 16th season in the league, he averaged 18 points, 10 rebounds, and 2 blocks a game. During his nearly 20-year career with the Spurs, they were never on pace to win less than 50 games in a season. In his 2nd season in the league, he led the Spurs to an NBA title. And in his 3rd to last season in the league, he did the same. He took a team that was never considered serious title contenders and created what many consider a dynasty, winning 4 titles in 9 years and 5 titles in 16. Pair that team success with 2 MVPs, 15 All-NBA appearances, 15 All-Defensive appearances, and 3 Finals MVPs, and you have a top 10 career of all time. But it goes past all of the individual and team success. Duncan could have been a selfish teammate. He could have demanded the ball or demanded that the offense run through him, but he was always willing to take a back seat to a guy like Tony Parker, Manu Ginobili, David Robinson, or Kawhi Leonard. He always took the team's best interest in heart, only demanding the ball when he knew the team absolutely needed him to take over. You could say his stats don't compare to a guy like Kobe's or Wilt's, and I can't argue that, but that's not what this list is about. When talking about overall greatness, Duncan is the epitome of that, Someone who found the perfect mixture of individual success and team success, something only a couple of guys in NBA history can say. At number 4, I have Bill Russell. Yes, I know Bill Russell played in the 60s against plumbers and milkmen, and that he would never last against a modern era. Again, not what this list is about. When looking at overall greatness, you do have to account for how they compare to every era in NBA history, but you also have to account for greatness in their specific era, and in that category, Russell is the most accomplished player ever. He completely dominated his peers in the playoffs, and rose up to the occasion every time possible, even stepping in as head coach near the end of his playing career. No matter how you feel about Russell, whether you think he should be lower on this list because he didn't score enough points, or because other guys during his time had better stats, you can't deny this. 11 rings, 5 regular season MVPs, a top 5 defender of all time, arguably number 1. If you want to talk stats, that's fine, but in that conversation, also mention that while Russell was in the NBA, Wilt only won 1 NBA title, and guys like Jerry West, Oscar Robertson, and Elgin Baylor were titleless. Mention that Russell only missed the NBA Finals once in his career. Mention that Russell knew how to control one of the biggest and greatest athletes in NBA history. Like Duncan, Russell could have scored more. For his career, he only averaged 13.4 shots a game. For reference, Wilt averaged 33.3 shots a game during his prime. Russell could have cherry-picked rebounds and assists at the end of games. But that just wasn't Bill Russell. This is what Bill Russell was. A leader, an all-time teammate, a winner, and most importantly for this list, the most accomplished player in NBA history. At number 3, I have Kareem AbdulJabbar. There are a lot of impressive stats about Kareem. How he averaged over 20 points a game from when he was 22 until he was 38. How he was the number 1 or number 2 option on 6 title teams. But the most impressive thing about Kareem to me is how he somehow played 20 seasons in the NBA. When you look at the most skillful players in NBA history that are over 7'2", you talk about Bill Walton, Ralph Sampson, and Yao Ming. Each of those guys, while dominant for a period of time, played less than 10 seasons in the NBA. Kareem somehow stayed at an effective level for 20 seasons, even earning 6 regular season MVPs, 15 All-NBA appearances, 11 All-Defensive appearances, and the title of greatest center of all time. He won a title for the Milwaukee Bucks, something only Giannis has done since. He went to the Lakers, a team that had an identity crisis after losing Jerry West and Wilt Chamberlain, and took a young core to deep playoff runs. He was a veteran on the Showtime Lakers, the consistent anchor that always knocked down his patented skyhook when needed. We likely will never see another player that could dominate from inside 15 feet like Kareem, a player who was a guaranteed 2 points, who could lead you to a title or take a back seat and work as a secondary scorer and solid rim protector, or even at the end of his career, be an amazing leader. It's unfortunate that we pigeonhole Kareem as the 3rd greatest player ever, because nowadays we rarely acknowledge his greatness. Instead of Kareem's legacy living on through NBA debates and all-time rankings, he's become the biggest afterthought of all the top 10 players. But despite being an afterthought, Kareem should still live on as one of the most dominant, yet consistent NBA players ever. At number 2, I have LeBron James. For those of you who didn't immediately click off the video, let me explain myself. Determining who is greater between Jordan and LeBron is like comparing apples and oranges. They played in completely different eras, played completely different positions, and have completely different play styles. It's hard to definitively say which player is better. Instead, I like to differentiate the two by giving each a separate title. To me, LeBron James is the best basketball player ever. That means in a team or one-on-one setting, if I were building a basketball player from scratch, he would look and play almost exactly like LeBron. I talked earlier about the versatility of Magic Johnson, how he could play the 1 through 5 and still take on the role of floor general. Well, LeBron can do all of that while maintaining a high level of defense and a respectable jump shot. He's the most complete player the NBA has ever seen, and if you put him at the number 1 spot on these rankings, I can't argue with you. LeBron has been an undisputed top 10 player from age 20 to now, age 38. He entered the league on the Cavaliers, a team that hadn't seen success in over a decade, and brought them deep in the playoffs despite having subpar supporting casts. He went to the Heat, and despite how controversial it was, won 2 titles and 2 MVPs in 4 seasons. He then went back home to Cleveland and defeated one of the greatest regular season teams of all time and one of the greatest playoff comebacks in sports history. He then moved to the Western Conference, and in his first fully healthy season, led the Lakers, a team consistently in the lottery before LeBron got there, and got them a title. You cannot deny his greatness and overall ability to lead a team to success. And while I have him at number 2 now, I truly think that when we look back at LeBron's career, we all will likely acknowledge that LeBron is the undisputed number 1 basketball player of all time. But at number 1, I have Michael Jordan. I said earlier that to me, LeBron is the best basketball player of all time. So how isn't he number 1? Because Jordan is the greatest basketball player ever. Someone who, when put around the right pieces, was a guaranteed 55 or more wins and an NBA title. You could say that Jordan should be penalized because of his lack of playoff success in his early years, but I think we need to take a look at those teams. Let's look at Jordan's 1988 roster, where he averaged 35 points a game and won both the MVP and Defensive Player of the Year. His next 4 leading scorers were 24-year-old Sam Vincent, 24-year-old Charles Oakley, 31-year-old David Corzin, and 25-year-old Brad Sellers. Not exactly the best supporting cast you could ask for. So with that roster, you would think they won maybe 35 games. Wrong. The Bulls that season won 50 games and made it to the second round before losing to the eventual champs, Detroit Pistons. He had consistently did this for the first 7 years of his career before Scottie and Horace Grant were finally ready to step up and take on second and third option roles. Then, Jordan won the Bulls 3 straight titles. And then, 2 years later, he did it again. We all have different definitions of greatness, but mine somewhat revolves around your ability to raise your team's ceiling and floor. If you replace Jordan on the 1990s Bulls with an average shooting guard at that time, yes, they would probably still make the playoffs, but they wouldn't win a title. And in the late 80s, the Bulls wouldn't have made the playoffs at all. You pair that greatness with 5 regular season MVPs, 6 finals MVPs, 11 All-NBA appearances, a Defensive Player of the Year, and 10 scoring titles, and in my opinion, you have the greatest basketball player ever. So there are my top 10 MVPs ever based on how their career played out. Who do you think deserves to be on this list that wasn't, and who do you think is the greatest basketball player ever? Comment below your thoughts and go ahead and subscribe for more videos just like this. I'm Julian from TalkBackSports, and I'll see you next time.